Welcome back to the Champagne Empress Podcast, your sanctuary for feminine power, magnetic attraction, and living a life of deep love, luxury, and devotion. I'm your host, Georgette, a feminine embodiment mentor, lifestyle curator, and your favorite Empress in heels. So, if that's your first time ever listening to my podcast, I want you to know in this space, we don't play small. We sip slow, seduce life, and live in full expression of our desires. Whether we're talking money, women, soul awakenings, or champagne-worthy wins, right? This is where women come to remember who the fuck they are. So pour a glass, light a candle, and let's step into your next level together, darling. All right, so before we even actually go further, I want you to take a deep breath with me, like a deep belly breath. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, and let your tongue rest at the bottom of your mouth. Maybe you're holding tea right now, maybe a glass of champagne, maybe nothing at all. I want you to just arrive. Because today isn't about becoming someone new. Today is about coming back to yourself. So this episode is really a welcome back, but not just to the podcast, but it is a welcome back to myself and to yourself. This past year for me, I took space, not because I didn't have things to say, but because I needed to go deeper into who I was becoming, into the work that I'm here to do. And sometimes evolution doesn't look like expansion, okay? Sometimes it looks like the silence, like questioning, like sitting with emotions you can't intellectualize away. And I realized something. You can't truly embody your power if you're afraid of your vulnerability. Yes, queens. We talk so much about confidence, leadership, magnetism, but one thing we don't talk enough about is how can we go deeper in our vulnerability? Because it actually is the doorway to all the things that we're actually wanting. Vulnerability is actually very uncomfortable, okay? Because it asks you to actually go deeper within yourself and open conversations you would rather avoid. Say the things you feel without actually sounding composed, because we have been raised to be composed. Don't say all the things you feel because you're going to be taken advantage of, right? You fear rejection. You fear the risk of being misunderstood and the risk of not being chosen. Those are real. So we avoid being vulnerable because of that. But here's the truth I had to learn. Being vulnerable does not make you weak. It makes you anchored. And that's how we want to approach life this year in 2026. We want to be so anchored in our devotion, so anchored in our truth, that being vulnerable is a way of life. Because when you are deeply anchored in who you are, rejection doesn't destroy you. Disappointment doesn't dismantle you. Oh, let me tell you though, it's gonna sting, but it doesn't define who you are. You are not less an empress because someone said no to you. You are not less an empress because you're disappointed. Because let me tell you, as the empress, you get to feel all the feelings that get to come without actually losing your center. All right, so story time. So recently, when I took space for myself, I went into a deeper devotion. And my intuition was coming back fully intense. And there was a connection I thought I completely erased from my body. And mind you, I connected with people after that I completely erased from the body. But there was a deeper intuitive want that my soul was asking for. Therefore, because this year we're going deeper, bolder in who we are, I got those inkling, right? So I recently had this experience with someone. I'm going to call him Mr. T. And that interaction showed me it wasn't about him at all. That deeper vulnerability that I went through, it showed me where I still needed to go deeper. Deeper in communication, deeper in expressing my desires clearly, deeper in asking the questions I sometimes soften. Because we want to be liked. We want to show that we're worthy. We want to show that we should be chosen. But sometimes your soul is going to ask you, there's something I want you to be bolder about. There's something I want you to speak about more. And I did. And let me tell you, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaotic. It was subtle, but powerful. Because what I realized, when we hold back our truth to stay comfortable, we abandon ourselves quietly. And I could have gone without telling him this at all and kept the truth about my thoughts. But my soul wanted that truth out. And vulnerability isn't just crying or sharing pain. Vulnerability actually say, this is what I want, this is what I feel, and this is where I stand. Even when your voice trembles a little, even when your heart is palpitating a little bit faster, you stand in that truth. And the beautiful part is also knowing when you're going to stand in that truth, especially when you're sharing that truth with someone else, is being vulnerable enough to accept the response you're going to get. Because going deeper into yourself requires devotion, not motivation. Devotion. Motivation comes and goes. Devotion stays when things aren't clear. It stays when things are uncomfortable. And devotion asks for patience. One thing I know I still work on, but when you go deeper in devotion, it's asking you to see things clearly in that moment, even if the clarity is that it is unclear. Because becoming more embodied is not instant. It is one step at a time. You are the Empress. You have forgotten. So the remembering is going to take time. The remembering is going to ask a lot of you. So it's going to require patience with yourself and with others. You don't wake up one day suddenly fearless. You wake up one day slightly more honest, slightly more open, and more courageous. And the more you show up like this and you wake up like this every day, it compounds until one day you're like, oh, what a new me. No, baby, you were just remembering and you were so devoted in who you are. You were taking the steps to become more of that. Because vulnerability also requires you to walk with the unknown. And that's where intuition comes in. When you are led intuitively, you will take actions. You don't always make logical sense in the moment. There's going to be that voice that tells you, don't do it, don't do it. You already know the answer to that. But you follow through because your soul, your intuition is here to guide you in the moment your ego wants to take over. Remember, we're not living a life centered in our ego. We're done with that. We're not doing this anymore. So when you are led intuitively, you will take action that don't always make logical sense in the moment. So you'll have the conversations that feel scary. You'll send that message. You're going to ask the question that's been running through your mind. And you will show up differently. And sometimes the outcome isn't what you expected. But later, in hindsight, you realize every step strengthens your capacity. It stretched your emotional resilience. It refined your voice. It expanded your standards. In the present moment, you rarely understand the full picture, but intuition isn't about seeing the end. It's about trusting the next step. And you don't have to become powerful by avoiding discomfort. You become powerful by staying present inside of it. When you're feeling all the emotions, when the world is telling you, don't do it, but you trust it. You trust the steps were meant for you. You trust the feelings. You trust the emotions. You feel them all. You don't become embodied by perfection. You become embodied by honesty. And being honest with your feelings, being honest with yourself, being vulnerable in the deepest moments is what it requires. And I'm going to say that sometimes the strongest thing you can say is, I am still learning myself. And I am not ashamed of that. And that is something I say all the time, because when I am questioning, when I am asking, and I'm being vulnerable with who I am, I ask the questions and I acknowledge my mistakes. I don't regret any of it, but I acknowledge where I could have done something differently. And I learned from that, and I'm not ashamed of it, because that's where we learn. So this return to the podcast isn't me coming back louder. It's me coming back deeper. Deeper in conversation, deeper in love, deeper in truth, deeper in devotion. And I would love for you to join me here, because this year is a year that we want everything to unfold, but we're going to have to go deeper. We're no longer doing surface level love, surface level truth, surface level devotion. That is not even devotion if it's surface level, because strength without vulnerability becomes armor. We're dropping the armor, Empresses. Because armor may protect you, but it also blocks intimacy, connection, and expansion. And this season, we are removing unnecessary armor. So, Empress, I want you to take a deep breath and let that land. If this conversation resonated with you, it moved you, I'd like for you to share it with a woman who's ready to rise, and tag at the Champagne Empress on Instagram and let me know what poured into your soul today. And if you've been feeling the call to go deeper into yourself, not just in mindset, but an embodiment into love, wealth, luxury, communication, I want you to come sit with me inside one of my experiences. Private mentorship, upcoming retreats. And if you haven't joined my Facebook group, the Champagne Empress Collective, join there. The links are in the show notes, because I want you to come sit with me there. Until next time, stay soft, stay sovereign, and embody the life you desire.